Hello everyone and welcome back. In this video I'm going to walk through the body of chapter 2, and in chapter 2 we're going to focus on the vendors and purchases area of Sage, the accounts payable side of the software. So to get started here, we're going to open up our company that we worked on in chapter 1. If you already have it open, you're already there, that's great. But if you closed it out and you need to open it again, I'm on the landing page when you start Sage here, and I'm going to select Open an Existing Company. And from the list here, I'm going to look for Bellwether Garden Supply with your name next to it. And I'm looking at these time and date stamps under Date Modified. And it looks like the date here is yesterday. That's the one that I want. So make sure you do that as well. You probably don't have as long of a list, but you will eventually as you work through the material in this course. So select that, click OK. All right, so I am going to get started here over in the navigational menu. I'm going to select Vendors and Purchases. So on this Vendors and Purchases screen, we can see that we have common vendor and purchase related tasks. Up top here, we have a button where we can view the existing vendors in the system as well as add new vendors. And then in the middle here, we have this workflow. And I want to talk about that a little bit. So when we're dealing with inventory that we resell, the typical workflow is to first create a purchase order. A purchase order is basically a request to our vendor. It documents what we intend to buy, at what price, and from which vendor. This step provides a paper trail and gives management a chance to approve purchases before money is committed. Next, when the goods arrive, we receive the inventory and record the bill. This step actually shows what was actually delivered and creates the liability in our accounts payable. At this point, we now officially owe money to the vendor. So entering a bill is a posting event. This will cause a change in the company's accounting records and the balances of our accounts. Specifically, if in the case of the purchase of merchandise inventory, an increase to inventory and an increase to our accounts payable. Whereas the purchase order, the request, does not post directly to any account balances because it hasn't created a liability yet, because we've just requested the inventory but we actually haven't received it, so we don't owe money for it. Finally, our last step is to pay the bill. This clears the account payable liability and reduces the balance of checking if we paid in the form of a check, or might increase the balance of a credit card if we use that as the payment method. In a well-run business, these steps are often handled by different people as a matter of internal control. One person creates the purchase order, another person verifies the goods received and enters the bill, and a third person approves and issues the payment. The separation of duties helps prevent errors and fraud. So that's the typical workflow that we talk about when we're talking about inventory that we resell. Purchase order, enter bill, pay bills. When it comes to supplies that the business uses or services, though, companies often skip the purchase order step. Instead, they enter the bill directly and then they pay it. So we're going to see a little bit of both in this chapter, and then we're going to finish up by running some reports that show the details of what we owe to different vendors. So to get started, we're going to enter a purchase order for inventory that we've requested from a supplier. So I'm going to click on that button and select New Purchase Order. So once we've got this purchase order screen up, we're going to first select the vendor. This transaction is described starting on page 60 of our textbook, and it says that it's with Abney and Son Contractors. So I'm going to select Abney from the list. Once I do that, you can see that the address for Abney and their credit terms automatically fill. We're going to enter the date, and what you might notice here that in the textbook they're using dates in 2019. You're going to see dates in 2022 because you're using the 2022 version of the software. So in my screen, I'm seeing 2019 here because I'm using an older version, but I'm just going to click on this calendar icon and a little calendar will pop up. Now, my calendar is actually appearing on a different screen. I can't seem to get it to appear on this particular screen on my multiple screen setup, but I'm going to select the date per the book. It's on March 28th. So don't worry about the year being different, just roll with whatever year you're seeing, which is probably going to be 2022. Now we're going to select the two different items of inventory that we're requesting from the vendor per the book. And to do that, I click in this item box and then click on the magnifying lens. And the first item of inventory has a SKU number of AVRY-10150. And it's a bird bath stone Gothic 2-piece. So I'm going to select that. And then the quantity that we're requesting from the vendor is 20. So I click in that box for quantity and type that in. And once I have entered the item, the unit price for that item appeared automatically, auto-filled, as did the general ledger account number. If I click on that box for general ledger account number and then click the magnifying lens, and we see our chart of accounts. And I can see, oh, yep, that is an inventory item, something we intend to resell, the 12,000 account number related to the inventory account. So don't need to make any change there, just showing that. And then once I entered that quantity, the amount field auto-populated, and that is calculated by taking that quantity, multiplying by that unit price. So now I'm going to go down to the second area of our purchase order, and the other item that we're purchasing is going to be a birdhouse of a particular type. So from this magnifying lens, I'm going to find the SKU number. It's AVRY 10100. Found it here, birdhouse kit. Get some more detail about the birdhouse and click in the quantity box. We're requesting 50 of these to be shipped. You can see that the general ledger account number and the unit price auto-filled, and once I put that quantity in, the amount calculated. And the total of the purchase order, which you should be matching up on your end and putting this transaction into your system, should be $3,834 even. So now this purchase order has been entered. We are going to save it to the system by clicking on this save button. Once I do that, the screen clears out, and then I can close out of this purchase order screen. So typically with the purchase of inventory that we intend to resell, we'll go through this three-step workflow. The textbook, however, doesn't do that with this particular purchase order. You'd think that they would go to enter bill and then pay bill, but nope, they actually transition to a different bill from a different vendor next. So the workflow that they use for this next bill is only going to go through a two-step process. First, we're going to enter bill, and then we're going to pay the bill. And when it comes to supplies that the business uses or services that it uses of other companies, companies often skip the purchase order step for those kinds of situations. Instead, they just go to enter the bill first and then pay it. So that's what we're doing now. This one starts on page 68 of the book. And it looks like the vendor that we're going to be using doesn't exist in the system. So the first thing we're going to do is actually add the vendor to the system. So there's a couple different ways to do that, but I'm going to click on this vendors button and then select new vendor. So the text tells us to use a vendor of Adler, all in caps. It's a new one. I'm going to click OK. And then I'm going to give the business a name here, and it's going to be Adler's Landscaping. We also have a particular point of contact there. It's the business owner, Philip Adler. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to specify the vendor type here. This is a way in Sage to classify or group your vendors. For example, you might create types like supplies or inventory or services. And later on, that classification makes it easier to filter reports or analyze spending by different vendor categories. So we have some examples that are already in there, but we're going to create a new one. We're going to call it supply. Next, we're going to specify the account that should be associated with this vendor from our chart of accounts, and this will help with automation when we record transactions related to this vendor. So we're going to select a particular account here, and it's going to be the 57,200 account, which is materials cost. Now notice that there are several accounts that start with 57,200 and then a hyphen and a little two-character abbreviation after that. We want to make sure to select 57,200 without any detail after that. It's a control account, and those are subsidiary accounts that fall underneath that account. Normally we'd add a bunch more information here with some address and other contact information, but for right now we're just going to enter the information that we have, and we're going to save the vendor to the system. And once we've done that, we can close out of this window, and now we're going to enter a bill related to this new vendor. So I'll click on that Enter Bills button and then New Bill. So on page 72, this transaction's described. It says that invoice number AD107 was received from Adler's Landscaping for the purchase of plant food, $45. And then it gives us a hint about which account to use and so on and so forth. So it looks like we're purchasing something that is not an inventory item. Instead, it's something that we intend to use within the business. We're a landscaping company. Apparently, maybe we have a greenhouse. We have to fertilize our plants. So we're buying some fertilizer, some plant food. So from the drop down up top here for the vendor ID, I click the magnifying lens, and in the list I should be able to see that vendor that we just entered, Adler. So I select them, and next I'm going to specify the date. It looks like it's March 15th. You can't see my calendar, but I clicked on the calendar icon and I selected March 15th there. We do have an invoice number for this transaction, so I'm going to type that in. So now we're going to enter the details of what this bill is for. Also notice down here in this Apply to Purchases tab that the general ledger account number of 57,200 was auto-filled. That happened as soon as we put Adler in as the vendor. That's the account that we associated with them earlier when we created the vendor record. And the item that we're purchasing here from Adler is not something that we intend to resell, so we're not going to find it under the item area because these are the SKUs that relate to inventory that we resell. We're not going to find it there. What we're ordering from them in a quantity of 1, I'm going to type that quantity in, is some plant food, some fertilizer. Remember that this business, this sample company, is a landscaping business. Maybe it has a greenhouse, and we're feeding some plants, some plant food to grow them, and then we can resell them later. So it's something that we use as opposed to resell, so that's not why we're not selecting it from the item list here. So I'm going to go here and I'm just going to type in what we're buying, and it's plant food. So I'm just going to go here and type in what we're buying, and it's plant food. Since it's not an inventory item, the unit price did not autofill. We're going to just have to manually enter that, and the text says it's $45 even. And once I do that, the amount fills with the multiplication of 1 times 45, which is also 45. So make sure that your total net due here shows as $45 even. Entering a bill does create a journal entry in our accounting system, and now that I've entered the details here, if I click on this journal button up top, I can see the debits and credits, the double entry behind the scenes here. So whenever we enter a bill, it's always going to increase our accounts payable, and accounts payable is a liability account, so increases on the credit side. Also, Sage tells us that about what's going on. And then also we have this 57,200 account that they told us to select. It's actually part of cost of goods sold because we're going to end up selling these plants that we're growing, and fertilizer is a part of growing them, so it becomes part of the cost of goods sold. So we're increasing our cost of goods sold expense there with the debit. So then I can close out of the journal entry, and then I want to make sure that I save this transaction so it posts to our accounts payable. So I hit the save button. Once I do that, the screen clears out, and then I can close it out. So now that we've entered that bill, now I'm going to show you how to pay it. So on the vendors and purchases area of the navigation bar again, I'll click on pay bills and then select pay bill. This transaction of paying the bill starts on page 75, and the first thing I'm going to do here in the vendor ID area is click on that magnifying lens, and we are paying Adler for that bill that we just entered. So I select Adler from the list, and when I did that, this tab that says apply to invoice populates, and I can see that AD107 bill that we just entered for $45 appearing. You can also see the discount auto calculated there, and now I'm going to see if we got the discount. The date that we're making the payment is on March 18th. So I click on that calendar icon. Once again, you can't see my calendar, but I'm selecting March 18 there. And because that is within the terms of getting a discount. The discount should apply, and right now the amount of this payment showing is 0, and that's because I haven't checked this box. So as soon as I check that box, I can see that the amount of the payment auto populates there at $44.10. We are paying in the form of check. If we were using a credit card, we could select that, but we're paying in the form of check, so it's going to come against our checking account here, which is our $10,200 that auto populated there. Don't have to change that. Now, the text actually has us saving this transaction and then going in and printing off a check. We're not going to print anything in this class, and printing the check actually is where the check number gets assigned. The check number for this one isn't described right away. It's described on page 78, but I'm going to enter it right now. It's 10,215 for the check number. And if I want to, I can see the journal entry behind the screen by clicking on that journal button there. And if I think about this for a minute, I'm paying a bill, so that's going to decrease my accounts payable. So I see that here in this line, a debit to my accounts payable will decrease it because it's a liability, so that's showing there. And then I'm paying from my checking account, so my checking account's an asset, and if I'm paying for my checking account, I have less in my checking account, so that asset's decreasing. That needs to be on the credit side. That's what we see in here. And then the amounts don't match because we paid within the discount period, so we see that we have a credit representing the amount of the discount there. So there's our journal entry. I haven't saved the transaction yet. Now I'm going to do that by hitting the save button. The screen clears out, and now I can close it. So there are other transactions that we could have with our vendors. It's pretty common that we might have a credit or a return back to a vendor. Maybe there was something that we received that was damaged or something like that. We don't see that in this chapter, but we could see that we could click on that button and then enter a credit memo and enter those details. We're not going to do that right now, though. For right now, what I'm going to have you do next is pull up the vendor ledgers report. And if you're on the vendors and purchases area of the navigation, you'll see vendor ledger report showing up here. You can also find all the reports under reports and forms. That would be specifically under accounts payable, but once you select that category, you can always browse and look around and find them. But yeah, it's under the accounts payable category, and here is your vendor ledgers. So I double clicked on that to pull up the report. So I'm going to maximize that screen. So what this is showing is all of the different vendors that we have in the system, as well as the activity. And by default, it's showing the activity during March. Once again, yours is probably going to say 2022, March 1 through March 31st. Don't worry about the year, just worry about the dates of March there. And we're seeing all the activity here. And what we're seeing here is each vendor listed, and then we have a column for debit and credit, as well as a running balance for that vendor. And this is really what we would call an accounts payable subsidiary ledger. It's showing all the details for all of our different vendors and how much we owe them and the activity during this period of time that's specified. So we just entered a couple of things. We entered a bill for Adler and then a payment of that bill for Adler. So here we see this credit to the Adler account. This is accounts payable, so that's the increase. So that's from the purchase, the bill that we entered. And you'll notice if I mouse over the $45, I can double click on that 45, and what I get there is the bill that we originally entered. So I'm getting that screen, and if I needed to make an edit to this, I could. However, since I've already paid this bill, I'd actually first have to, if there was an error on the bill itself, because it's already been paid, I'd first have to go into the payment transaction and remove it, and then I'd be able to edit it. Once this this bill has been paid, this is no longer editable. I can come in here and try to edit, but it won't let me save because the bill's already been paid. But I just wanted to show how this is interactive. The reports in Sage are interactive. I can also click on the line for the payment here. The payment is going to reduce the account payable, so that's why we see this debit there. I double click on that, and here I see that transaction screen that we were just using where we paid off that bill. And once again, if I needed to make an edit to the original bill, I'd first have to remove this this payment of the bill. I can do that by either deleting or voiding. Deleting removes the transaction from the ledger. Voiding zeroes it out. Voiding is generally considered to be a better practice because it leaves a better paper trail. but I don't need to do that in this case. I just wanted to point that out. So you can see here that Adler, we entered that bill, but then we paid it, so the balance to Adler owed at the end of this period is 0. And then also the other thing I wanted to mention is that purchase order that we recorded earlier for Abney. Notice that it was $3,834. It's not showing here. Well, the reason why is because it was a purchase order, it wasn't a bill. We've requested the inventory from Abney, but we haven't actually received it yet. Therefore, we don't have an accounts payable to them for that transaction. We have some other entries in their ledger. These were in the sample company to begin with, but the credit of $3,834 hasn't been entered because we haven't entered a bill yet because we haven't received that inventory. So now I'm going to close out of this report as well as the report chooser. And that actually brings us to the end of chapter 2. Now we're to the end of chapter exercises starting on page 87. You don't have to open up a company again. You can just continue with this one. And if you're already in the system. And what you're going to be doing on 87 is first entering a new vendor, just like we did a moment ago with Adler. You'll be doing the same. And then you are going to be entering a bill for the new vendor. The new vendor is called Office Suppliers. You're going to be entering a bill for them, and then you're going to be paying off that bill. And when you pay it off, you don't have to print any checks. Just remember to enter the check number as they indicate, but ignore the parts about printing any checks. Once that's done, you're going to run the vendor ledgers report again, and I'll pull that up. And but wait until you record those 2 transactions in the exercises, and then once you've done that, make sure to save a PDF of the vendor ledger report by clicking on the PDF button, and then make sure that you use the naming convention that's in the book. I also gave you the naming convention on our Canvas site, but make sure that you use that naming convention. And then once again, don't save these reports to the default location because it's several folders deep. It's probably going to be hard for it to find. Use your desktop, your downloads, or your documents folder, because those are going to be easier for you to locate, because you're going to have to submit these PDF reports to me inside of Canvas. That's how I'm going to grade you. So I'm going to want to see the vendor ledgers report, which is going to show the activity for Adler. It's going to show me that you did what I did in the video. It's also going to show the activity for another vendor called Office Suppliers. You're not seeing it here because I'm going to ask you to do that, but I'm going to look for that activity, and then that's all I really need from this chapter. So once you've entered those 2 transactions from the end of chapter exercises and created that vendor ledgers report which reflects that, you're basically done with chapter 2. Just make sure that you do complete a backup of your company when you're done, just for insurance purposes in case we have an issue with your company file later. So remember, once you're done with that stuff at the end of the chapter 2, go to File and then Backup and follow the prompts. Make sure to save your backup in a location like Desktop, Downloads, Documents folder so you can easily find it. We don't typically need the backups, but they're there just in case we have problems down the road. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you have any questions at all.